With the recent announcement of the Horus Heresy Legion Imperialis, it's safe to say that Warhammer on an epic scale is back. The game of small-scale toy soldiers is about to get even smaller. Again, and I for one cannot wait to field an army of tiny space marines. So what better time to go and dig around in my collection for one of the goofiest looking models from the old range and give it a bit of a facelift, and just maybe supersize it as well. I'm Benji and welcome to Benji's Hobbies. So this rather sad looking little guy is one of the Warhound Titan models from the original Aeptus Titanicus game. Released back in the late 80s, which makes this model almost as old as I am, it's clear to see that this little guy has definitely seen better days, so I'm going to give him a bit of a facelift and a refresh. Now what's really drawn me to this miniature is just how goofy it looks. The crazy wolf head on it makes it look like a robot furry's wet dream, and is a stark contrast to the more boxy, industrial and serious looking modern Warhound Titan that we all know today. While the more modern Titanicus models do look great, there's something just so endearing about these old models though, and I'm definitely on the lookout for some more to create an old school metal Titanicus army. After stripping back the old paint, I've decided to replace the old square base with a 40mm round one, which I think gives it a more modern look. Painting wise, I'm opting for some very safe colours. A heavy dry brush of metallics across the metal areas, blue for the main chunk of the armour, a few white panels to add a bit of variety, and a bright red head. Honestly, with this colour palette, I don't think this guy would look too out of place in a squad of Ultramarines. For this project, I'm almost entirely using the Too Thin Coats range, which I've absolutely loved using over the last few months. They give excellent coverage and have been my go-to paints for the last couple of projects, so I'd highly recommend giving them a go. The metallics and whites in particular are some of my favourites, so go and check them out. I've listed all the ones that I've used in this video down in the description below. With him based with some grimdark base ready, I'm happy with how he's turned out. But just what if I had another one, but way bigger? And I mean real Titan sized. So I recently got sent a brand new FDM printer by AnkerMake. In all honesty, I've not heard much about this company before, but when they reached out to me and offered to send me one, I was keen to put it through its paces, and this sort of project just feels like the perfect opportunity to give it a good testing. Whilst unboxing, my first impression of the AnkerMake M5C is it's really good. It seems incredibly well constructed and a super solid piece of kit. And what's more, it was very easy to put together, needing only 8 bolts and a few cables attaching to quickly get it up and running. The build quality on this thing is absolutely second to none, and it feels like it's going to be a very robust piece of printing equipment. Now this printer is very different to ones I've used in the past, and has been designed from the ground up with beginners in mind. The AnkerMake app makes setting up the printer incredibly easy, and with a few clicks in the app, I've leveled the bed and connected it up to the Wi-Fi for some effortless wireless file transfers, rather than having to rely on memory cards to move the files around. Before I go ahead and slice up my files for the giant wolf-headed Titan though, I'm going to give it a test run with the classic Benji that's included in the pre-sliced files on the AnkerMake app. Now it says it prints in under 18 minutes, which I thought was unlikely, but boy was I proven wrong. This thing is rapid. With the stated maximum printing speed of up to 500mm per second, this thing prints out this cheeky little Benji in no time, and maintains a decent print quality too. For longer prints, there's even a countdown timer on the app, so you can see how your print is progressing in real time. So I'm super happy with the test, so I'm going to slice up my files using the AnkerMake slicer. Now just like the printer itself, the slicing software feels like it's been developed with the beginner in mind. In some slicing software, there are lots of settings and variables that, unless you're familiar with printers, just comes across like jargon. But the AnkerMake software does a great job of stripping this right back and making the slicing process as simple as possible for beginners. The one feature that I absolutely love is once I've previewed my files, I can simply click print and it's sent automatically via my Wi-Fi to my printer in the garage. I no longer need to go backwards and forwards to swap memory cards, just click print and I'm good to go. Over the next couple of days, I spent some time printing out all the necessary pieces for this project and set to work removing all of the support material on the finished pieces. With my parts all cleaned up and as smooth as I'm going to get them in the limited time I've got, I glued them all together just using super glue. The hollowed pieces make them very light, so I'm not too worried about the glue not holding, but if they were any heavier, I'd definitely consider pinning as well as gluing, just for that extra strong bond. I gave the whole model a blast with black primer, but this time opted to leave the carapace and head separate to make painting them a little easier. I kind of imagined this giant version and the epic version like Dr. Evil and Mini-Me. So in terms of painting, I'm going to use the same colours as I used on the epic scale version, but obviously just in much bigger volumes. I'm always a little hesitant when I paint FDM prints. My worry is that the inevitable texture might show up some of the brush strokes, so to try and avoid this, I'm using one of my Army Painter dry brushing brushes to stipple on the bulk of my metallics. It gives a similar effect to dry brushing, but without highlighting the more pronounced raised edges of the print. Next up, the base coats on the rest of the model. Now I opted to paint this by hand using a large brush. With the armour panels edging onto the already painted silver trim, I wanted as much control as possible, so painting by hand seemed like the most logical way of doing it. Instead of highlighting by hand though, as I had done with the epic version, I decided to put my new airbrush to good use. I recently got sent one by a company called Gallery, who admittedly I had never heard of before, but I'm really happy with the quality and the results it's given me. I got some really smooth and subtle highlights across the flat areas which I would never have been able to achieve with a normal brush. Using it has reminded me of what a fantastic tool an airbrush is, and I really should use it more often. I've included a link in the description below to the model I've used, so if you want to go and take a look for yourself, then go ahead. It is early days of using it, but so far so good, and it's getting a big thumbs up from me so far. After airbrushing on my highlights, I feel like at this scale the model is just looking a little bit too clean. So I whipped out the streaking grime, loaded it in the airbrush, and just went to town on all the corners, recesses, and everywhere I felt looked like it needed griming up. Admittedly, I did probably go a little heavy-handed with this, so there were some areas I had to knock it back a little with some thinner to get a more subtle effect. Finally, I edge highlighted up some of the metallics to give it a little shine, and with that, the Titan is done. Now before you all start screaming at me in the comments, I know that this model was released in resin by Armorcast, which was a third-party company that was at one stage licensed to make models for Games Workshop, a little like an early version of Forge World. But looking at the prices of these original bad boys on eBay, there is no way I could justify buying one, let alone the fact that they are like hen's teeth. My printed version looks pretty good though, especially for the limited time it's taken me. And while it's unlikely to ever see a game, it is a really cool display piece to look at on my shelf. A huge thanks to AnkerMake for sponsoring this video and giving me the opportunity to not only use one of their fantastic printers, but also work on this cool project. Make sure you check out the links in the description below for more information, and look out for more projects on this printer from me in the future. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.